How's it going, John?
Eric, it is going pretty well. Pretty well. Well, I don't know. I'll open it up with a bang or a collapse or a because you edited last week, so I went back and re-listened to it, and I realized I had mentioned on the podcast that my basement was leaking, and so my first solution didn't work. My second solution this past weekend, I put up under deck roof. You know, like I grabbed a bunch of metal sheeting, and I cut on the table saw. I cut like some stair step things, and I put it up. And I was like, oh, I'm good. Because on Tuesday, there was a huge storm on Tuesday. I think it rained like an inch or something like that. And my basement leaked again.
Oh.
So my hypothetical solution, which I thought was going to be just fine, was not. So
we're 0 for 2.
So I'm 0 for 2, and I'm not sure what the next thing is other than get out a shovel and start digging or something. I don't know. I don't know what to do quite next.
Well, I'm 0 for 2 in my leaky shower.
Oh,
I don't know, so I can commiserate.
Okay.
So my next project this week has been crazy. So this upcoming week, my next project will be to take out the big glass doors again, and I'm going to hang a curtain rod and shower curtain in there and make the kids use that for a week and see if it still gets wet or see what gets wet and see if I can, I'm going to put some temporary blocking things in place to see. I'm going to try different things out that way.
Debugging. And physical debugging.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to do some physical debugging and see if it still happens, because if it still happens after this next week, I'm pretty sure it's behind the wall, which is not what I want to know.
No.
So.
Yeah, well, I can commiserate with you, but yeah. It's anyway. So that consumed one of my weekend days because it was not a tiny project, and my wife, to be fair, she asked me, well, do you want to just string up a tarp first and see if it does it? And I was like, nah, I'm pretty sure. And besides, it'll be cool anyway. Which that was kind of the thing. Is like, well, would you want it there anyway? I was like, yeah, I think it would be nice. I think if I like it, I figured I'd do the rest of the deck. But
I will have to come out and look at it because I think we've mentioned it before. I want to do something along those lines under my deck.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I
don't know if it's exactly the same thing you did.
Yeah, well, I would have, I have a couple suggestions if you were to do something different, but that's okay. You could learn from my,
that's right,
mistake or not mistakes, experience. We'll just say.
That's right. Learn from experience.
So anyway, I think. Yeah, it's fine. I'll shoot you a picture at some point when I'm here in daylight, which has not been the case much lately. So anyway, that is that. So yeah, that was my big thing. That and I have 2 dead beehives or bee colonies. So it was a bit of a bummer weekend. There was
by
some
colony,
nice
do you mean hive, or is a colony more than one hive?
Well, a colony is. Generally, yeah, you think of colony equal hive, sure.
Okay.
Yeah, but I mean, in general, a colony is the entire queen bee with all the workers and everything else, and a colony lives in a hive.
Got it.
But so I went out and I was gonna feed.
Well, sorry. My mental model with the way you're describing it here, though, is I'm not sure it is a 1-to-1 relationship, or is it a 1-to-1 relationship, or can it be a 1-to-many relationship between colony and hive? I'm now just curious.
A hive can have a colony in it, or a hive can be empty.
Can a hive have 2 colonies in it? I'm just thinking what the regular expression is.
I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, so I would say sometimes you can combine colonies into one tower, but I don't know if you would say they're in one hive or if you would just say that. So I don't know quite the boundaries of the definitions there. Other than that, generally you're supposed to refer to a colony as the actual bees, because a colony may swarm, and then you have a colony on a tree limb.
Okay.
The colony will go to find a hive somewhere that it will live in.
A hive is a box.
A hive is a box.
A hive is a house.
But sometimes to split a colony, you will take a couple of frames of it and, put a solid board in between and then stick it on top. Because a weak colony, if you put it on top of a strong colony, the heat will rise and help the weak colony stay alive by kind of, providing ambient warmth to the weaker colony on top. Got it.
Okay, sorry. That is probably a little too deep on Bee 101,
welcome to Bee Talk.
You piqued my interest.
Welcome to Bee Talk. Yeah, sorry.
Mostly bees.
But anyway, so I went out this weekend. I was going to feed them I was going to check and make sure and see if they needed some food. And I had some fondant that I had made up last winter and I hadn't fed. Anyway, so I went out and so I cracked the top of the boxes, and two of them were totally, well, one of them was dead with all the bees inside, and I'm super bummed and I'm super upset at myself because I blame myself because I think that one may have died because the opening of the door got blocked from dead bees, and then they couldn't get out. And I think that was...
push the dead bees out on their own?
Well, sometimes sometimes the dead bees can pile up, and then the bees are not smart enough to... Yeah. And so, ironically, I was listening to a podcast just this past week in the car, and the guy was like, I really like having an open, a top entrance on my colonies, so just in case the bottom entrance gets plugged, the bees are not completely stuck in the box, because that's a good way to kill a colony. And I was like, that advice is about 1 week late. I mean, I don't quite know how late it was, but actually, I do know that less than 3 weeks ago, I had bees going in and out of that box. So, and there were a ton of dead bees. I'll put a picture in the show notes. The entire bottom of the box was covered. I was really upset about that one. The other colony that died was completely empty. So I don't know what happened to those bees.
Did they swarm?
It's possible, or they died very slowly. But there were resources in there still. So I do not know the answer to that one. So yeah, I mean they probably
mystery.
They probably swarmed at some point. But it must have been really late in the winter and couldn't have been all the bees. Anyway, so I'm down to 5, and then there were 5, and I'm still not through the winter. So I'm of the ones that are left, I put sugar on top so they can eat it if they are too hungry, or if they get hungry or run out of stores. So we'll see.
Right. Okay.
We'll see. But yeah, it was kind of the fixing of my deck roof was not a bummer this weekend because I was super excited and thought I had fixed it. So that only became a bummer in retrospect.
After the rain.
After the rain. Yeah. But yeah, that was my weekend. So.
Bummer.
Yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. So.
Yeah. Well, my weekend was another road trip, another 2,000 miles on the truck.
That's a lot of miles. Yeah. Well, you have listened to the last 2 episodes of ATP then.
Yeah. Side note, I think I talked about upgrading to Big Sur on my work machine, and I was having problems with passwords, and it just wouldn't accept my password when I knew I typed it right. an episode or two ago of ATP addressed that issue. Apparently, it was a known bug. You had to reset the SMC, the T2
really?
chip, and that fixed the problem, which I wish I'd have known before I blasted my laptop.
Paved the laptop. Okay. Well, see, this is why I'm still not upgraded. So
now you know.
I can let other people learn these things before I have to experience them myself.
Yeah. And then I'm saving it for my something fun, but my road trip back was not a podcast.
Okay. All right.
So.
All right. Okay. I will wait in with bated breath. That's funny. That's funny. All right, man.
All right.
Let's get into follow up. Did you put one thing in follow up?
Yes. I did drop something in follow up. It's a right to repair article.
What?
This one is
I hadn't seen this.
In Europe. Came out with a number of additional restrictions on designing products that are unfixable. So basically it's a right to repair type laws. But the interesting thing that I pulled out of this, so it's just on top of the various right to repair things we talk about over the last 3 years now. The one quote I wanted to read here was, Europe is one of the largest markets in the world, which means that new EU design guidelines and right to repair mandates could force manufacturers across the world to make more durable products. The shift can't come soon enough. Over 10 million tons per year of e-waste, which is the fastest growing waste stream in Europe. In Germany alone, 2 million tons are generated annually. Repairing products and extending their useful life could play a key role in mitigating the environmental consequences of all this waste. And that's exactly what a large majority of EU citizens want. And here's the kicker thing that I thought was interesting. Nearly 80% would rather repair their device than replace them. That seems like a high number on the surface. But then when I think about it, it's like, would I? I think most people would probably choose to repair something than replace it outright.
How many things, like how much e-waste that you have though is for things that have stopped working or for things that you have ceased using?
That's a good observation, because I look around my house and the majority of them are things I've stopped using.
Yeah.
And I've started to try to find and like Google some Nest. I had some Nest things that had gone bad, and Google has a free repair or free return, and they'll dispose of it program. So does Apple.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I've been trying to do the e-cycling, but I still probably have 15 cell phones in various, over the last 15 years that are sitting in a box, which I should probably just get them all recycled.
I don't remember if I said something on the podcast. I might have, because I seem to enjoy mocking myself. But if I didn't already say it, then I'll just say it again, that less than a year ago, because it's been since quarantine, I think, I took down to the recycling at the dump here a CRT monitor. It was the CRT from my 486. It was a ViewSonic 17-inch that sat in a box in the original packaging. Mind you, for at least since I moved back to Oregon. So that means I moved it to Oregon. I moved it from my old house to this house, and it sat in this house for 5 years before I was like, I just got rid of it. And I didn't, it was one of those things that I actually opened the box up. I'm like, this is still a monitor, right? I'm like, oh yeah, original packaging. and I was like, you know what, and the thing is, I have such pack rat tendencies, but because I remember having read something not too terribly long ago that like CRTs are like people that do game consoles really, like CRTs, and I was like, oh, maybe I should. And I'm like, just recycle it. just recycle it. So that's what I did. But seriously, that was at least 15 years of a pretty big box sitting in my house or sitting in my storage for literally a CRT.
Yeah. No, I totally have tons of partially torn apart electronics because I had a cool idea of something I wanted to build. I have monitor cases. I have, I have an old Apple iMac, the original iMac with the CRT and everything.
Uh-huh.
I threw out the insides and I kept the bubble because I wanted to build something out of it.
Make a fish bowl
like
or
a
something.
fish tank. Yeah, something inside. I thought that'd be cool. It's still sitting in my basement somewhere. So
yeah,
I have tons of that kind of stuff, which I should buy a tiny house and then move in there, and then I would have,
You're only allowed to keep what fits in your tiny house.
What can fit in the tiny house? Yeah.
Anyway. So, I guess the thing from just reading this quote, or having you read this quote, is there's like, if something I'm using breaks, I want it repaired because I use it. But I would guess that a huge percentage of our electronic waste are gifts that somebody gave us that were like, or, things that, we're done with, or that maybe things that we replaced, like I bought a laser jet here, and so my old inkjet that went to e-waste. Unless it's still sitting on my floor over there. Oh, no. The printer's still sitting on the floor over there. Okay, I gotta take that to the dump.
I have all sorts of stuff that I should just suck it up and
Electronic recycling is free at the dump. Just FYI.
Out in Hillsboro?
Mm-hmm. The one kind of behind Home Depot there.
Okay. I did not know that. I will. Yeah. Maybe I'll have to take a big old box. You just show up and hand them a box of stuff and say, thank you?
You have to wait in line to go through the car. They stop at the they've got kind of the people inside the house, and you tell them that you just have some electronics recycling, and they'll say, "Oh, go up around the blue rock," and then you have to put it in the bin. But yeah, effectively you could carry a box up there.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah. All right, there you go. And I need to be better.
Same. All right, dude.
All right. Topics?
So my topic this week is another thing that we talk about a lot, or at least I talk about a lot. My little encryption keys, my YubiKey.
YubiKey?
Do you use your YubiKey?
I do.
Good.
I do.
Good.
Got it on my keychain right here.
Awesome.
Yep.
So this is a side channel attack that allows an attacker to take a hardware key and recover the encryption keys from it.
Oh, this is the one that Wayne posted in Slack, right?
Yeah, Wayne posted one in Slack as well, and I stumbled across it on a different article, and so this is Wayne knows what I like to see. So this was insane, though. I mean, it's a 60-page PDF report. I
did not see the original PDF.
Yeah, it's it's tracked with the CVE. The trick to this one is nobody. If you have a YubiKey or a Google, this was mostly around the Google Titan keys. It's focused on the type of chip that's used, which depending on what type of chip is used. But I assume or imagine the way they did the attack could work on other places. But the point for this one is it's not a remote access. It's not something over the internet or even over the local network. To exploit this one, an attacker needs to actually physically have the security key. And then they just can't, have it in their hands and wave at some magic. They need to pull it apart. They need to kind of really dig into it. So this is more a nation state type or high profile executive type attack, I suppose. But you and me, we don't need to worry about this Because what they did was they analyzed the electromagnetic radiation coming off the chip while it was processing cryptographic operations. And from that, they were able to reconstruct the encryption keys used to sign anything generated on the device. So it's insane, an insane side channel attack. But again, like the good news for you and me is this requires very expensive gear, custom software. This is, someone who really, 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 really wants the details has to want to spend a lot of money to get whatever you've encrypted with your YubiKey. So I have not read the 60-page report either. But if this kind of thing, like this crazy electromagnetic radiation and analysis sounds interesting to you, here you go. But please still use your hardware keys.
Yeah.
They're still good. They still work.
I kind of want to read that report. Did they, because I can imagine ways in which you would do encryption operations, monitor the EM, and then have labeled data. If you know the security keys, do it on enough of the security keys. Can you monitor the radiation readings, and then run it through a model to kind of predict what the each bit in the encryption key is, and then plug in the key that you don't know about, and run those, and then I'm imagining a world in which you run. It says they run 6,000 operations, so run a bunch of operations, right. And as the bits kind of have develop a histogram of what the probability, what the machine learning algorithm says for each of the operations, they kind of snap into. I don't know. I don't know. I can imagine.
I don't know how it was done.
I can imagine some interesting things there.
Mm-hmm. Anyways, so that was my topic for the week.
That
was cool.
Hardware. That is a slightly more than an evil maid attack, but essentially something along those lines. Yeah. All right. Well, so my topic, I almost put into follow-up, but I just thought it was too long for follow-up, and it's interesting in its own right. But this is the gift that continues giving. So, this is more sunburst. But the thing that I saw this week, so CrowdStrike released an article on what they called Sunspot, the Sunspot implant, which is how the actors were able to modify the code to put the sunburst backdoor into the SolarWinds product. I don't know if you had a chance to read this or not, but
I did.
At least prior, I didn't know. I read on previous articles. It was a supply chain attack. The code was injected in the process before it was signed, or the code was in and compiled prior to having the software signed. So that's why it was a supply chain attack. But it wasn't clear before. So how is it that the developers never noticed what was going on here? And the reason the developers didn't notice is because the code was not checked into GitHub or anything like that, or into their source control. What was done was this implant monitored for instantiations of, so it basically got onto a build machine, monitored for invocations of MS Build, which is the Microsoft Build tools. And if MS Build was being invoked with command line arguments that indicated that it was building this particular project, then it would it would go and replace a single source file on disk, so that the build, when it came time to compile that file, would not see the file that was came or committed or checked out, cloned out of source control, but would instead compile the one that was replaced by, this implant. Tricky, huh?
Yeah. So they had in the malware the source code they wanted to inject and would override or create or add a new file or update an existing file with their malicious code, right? Just in time malware is what.
Exactly. Yep.
What
and
there.
and there were a couple of other interesting facts in here. The one of which was that the files. So they had I guess they had hard coded strings that represented the files they're going to replace, but those weren't just in plain text in the malware. They were encrypted with an AES key, which in order to encrypt it has to be there on disk. So, or it has to be within the file because it's going to decrypt programmatically. Anyway, they chose encryption keys that are common in games or in that were used in well-known games, presumably so that those couldn't easily be used as indicators for any sort of signature, or they wouldn't, flag as being unusual, which is interesting. So, right. and and one of the other things is, they did, they clearly were well tested, or they were cautious in what they were doing. So, for example, they tested the hash of the file that they're about to replace. So presumably so that they would know that they would be safe replacing the file. So if somebody had, let's say you were a SolarWinds developer, you'd had to make a change to this particular file. If you'd gone in and changed it, then they would no longer do the replacement because there would be a chance that there would be a runtime error. Or not a runtime error. Right. There would be a compile error. The developers would have to go figure out why is the build failing, and then they'd be detected. Mm-hmm. They had a check of a second mutex to cause safe exit. So, and again, this is presuming motivation on the part of the developers, but under the presumption that they want to be really careful about how and when the program would exit so that it wouldn't prematurely exit and cause, again, compilation failures. Interesting, it's sort of a professional job, I guess. So net, there's this, it's not a terribly long article, but net. So the thing had persistence because it used scheduled tasks, which were triggered at boot time to, launch the monitoring. Used AES to protect the targeted source code. Something I didn't mention is it had RC4 encryption for log file entries, so the logs weren't trivially plain text. Mm-hmm. Let's see. It logged to a legitimate Microsoft directory and an apparently genuine VMware log file, potentially, VMware vmdump.log was what it was caused, but something that I think is not suspicious seeming. Mm-hmm. It was able to read the it promoted itself. I didn't have it here. I think so that it could read the MS build memory, specifically so that it could find out what the command line arguments that MS build was started with, so find out what solution it was compiling, and kind of a tricky way of extracting those, and the replacement of the source code during the build process before compilation. And something I forgot to mention, just in case there were any errors, they put pragmas around the pragma warning disable and pragma warning restore around their own code, just to make sure that they're weren't any extraneous log or compiler warnings. Yeah, tricky. So anyway, this was a little more information about how exactly Sunburst was installed. So and I think it said at the top of the article, I didn't actually copy that out, but that this was done because they were performing forensics on one of the had to have been infected build servers. So there you go. There you go.
All right.
Anatomy of a supply chain attack.
And a good one at that.
You could say that. You could say that.
So shall I tell you my something fun as it relates to a 12-hour ride in the car?
Okay. Tell me your something fun as it relates to a 12-hour ride in a car.
So on the way over, going east, I listened to podcasts and talked with my daughter and had conversation. Going west, I was all alone with my thoughts. And I started listening to podcasts, and then I just thought, I really just don't want to listen to podcasts right now. I wonder if there's a book I could get. So at the first rest stop where I'm getting gas and taking care of business, I load up the Libby app. And search for audiobooks. And I'm in the middle of reading. I'm almost done with reading Neal Stephenson Fall. And so, which is fascinating for other reasons, which I won't go into. But I found...
Hold on, we might have to in a minute.
Yeah.
But, okay.
But I found... so there were a lot of audiobooks that I could put on request a hold for that weren't available, but a different book by Stephenson called Zodiac, which apparently is a book that he wrote in 1988. So I
think it was one of his first, if not his first.
I was going to say, I don't know if it was his first or, it was near one of his first. And I thought, hey, this one I can load up. So I did, and it wasn't very long. It was like 9.5 hours. Of audio at I was playing at 1 1/4 speed. So the Libby app also lets you play it at incremental speed. So I figured, well, get something that I can finish because I was only 2.5 hours into my 12-hour drive. So I thought, well, this will be perfect. So that's what I did. I listened to Zodiac, an eco-thriller from 1988.
I was going to say the only thing I remember about that is eco-terrorism.
Yeah, it's clearly, well, I shouldn't say it that way. It's different than his later books. Yeah, the cheap and easy thing to say is you can tell it's one of his first books. I don't know if that's necessarily fair, but it was his style of writing, and it kind of bounced around. You moved through different worlds, through different chunks of time, and I don't know. I enjoyed it. Yeah,
it was. No, I remember enjoying it, but I more remember reading. I remember the act of reading it more than I remember the story itself. Although it's probably been 20 years since I've read it, so. Right. I remember the cover.
9.5 hours on Libby.
There you go.
And you can listen to the audiobook.
That's brilliant. I might have to. Okay, so you're almost at the end of fall, you said.
Yes. So I am, let me see. I am to the part where, according to Kindle, I'm 78% through the book.
Okay.
So
no, that's cool. But I guess one of the things about that particular book that I have thought about a lot in the last couple of months is the bubbles that people are in. So you've read the part where they were, where what happened in Moab is in dispute.
Right. Yeah. That's at the very beginning.
Yeah. And when they gone on the road trip through the Leviticans and all the bubbles where people don't have a shared understanding of reality is just a apt metaphor for
it. There were very easily drawn parallels in my reading over the last. I started it 2.5 weeks ago, because it's a Libby. It's checked out from the library. It's due tomorrow, actually, and so I may have to recheck it out because I don't know if I'm going to get finished with it by tomorrow. But yeah. I remember thinking, man, there's a lot of parallels here to today. This is not a good thing.
and the as he would normally do, the natural consequences of continuing that line of thought for farther out into the future. So it's interesting. So the book that we're just talking about here is called Fall or Dodge in Hell.
Yes.
Is and I think that's his most recent book, but it's the most recent one I've read.
Yeah. It's from 2019. He did one that I think I talked about, or I maybe mentioned to you before, Dodo.
Yeah, I read that one.
But it was written with someone else, so I don't know if it's like he wrote it or he just kind of lent his name to the person who really wrote it. He just kind of heavily edited and added stuff. I don't know what that.
I don't quite know either. It was still good. It was still enjoyable.
Recent as well. Yeah, that was fun. I'm looking. The new one. The book 2 comes out in February, so I'm looking forward to reading book 2
of Dodo.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Wow.
So
I need to pay more attention to things that are coming. Okay. All right. Fun.
Anyways,
okay.
Your something fun.
My something fun. My something fun is somebody mentioned to me the James Webb Space Telescope, and so I was like, because they actually asked, is that the one that's going to be at the Lagrange point? And I was like, I don't remember, but it made me go back and look it up. So the link I'll put in here is to basically the fact page for the James Webb Space Telescope, which is supposed to launch this year. I guess keep my fingers crossed. If they had a launch date, I didn't read that far, or it's somewhere else. But anyway, so the tricky thing about this, or the thing that I thought was cool, was a couple of things. The first of which is, this is intended. It's the spiritual successor to the Hubble, but it is intended to capture light in infrared, and it is intended to orbit at one of the Lagrange points, L2, which is a long ways out, 1.5 million miles. So basically 5 times farther away than the moon, in the direct opposite direction of the sun. So the Lagrange points are the points. There was a nice little diagram on this page here. But the Lagrange points are the points where the 3 bodies can orbit each other stably, and there are 5 of them. But since this is in infrared, or since the telescope is going to be collecting data in infrared, the tricky thing about this is that, having a large heat source like the sun, or even the moon and Earth, not that they're heat sources, but that they would be a large source of reflected radiation, is problematic. So it needs to be pointed away from them. And so that's the nice thing about the L2 point, is it is directly opposite the Earth from the sun. And so it's going to orbit facing away from the Earth. So basically, it should have a nice view of space at all times. But one of the other cool diagrams on this page here is, since it is always essentially has its back towards the Earth and the sun, and it does say that light from the sun is going to be hitting it. So I guess it must not be entirely. In fact, it's probably too far away to be entirely within Earth's shadow. The back side of the telescope is 185 degrees Fahrenheit. and that's to reflect and protect the cold side, which is at minus 388 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's got a 550 degree difference between the inside to the outside. It was crazy,
wow.
Right? Do you see the diagram on there?
Yeah.
And the little YouTube video that illustrates the orbit is cool too. It's just a little 20-second video, but it shows how the telescope won't be entirely stationary. And there's more info on here that basically says, the L1 and L2 Lagrange points are not stable like L3 and L4. And so it does require a little bit of, propulsion to kind of keep, to adjust it so that it stays there. But it will, and I think that also why it'll have I think I should have remembered or seen it in here. But there's a mission life that will be expected here. But anyway, this is really cool. So I figured this would be my something fun this week. Put in the thing to the fact about the James Webb Space Telescope.
This is a really well written, a pleasing to the eye article.
Right?
Enough graphics to make it interesting, a YouTube video, details. I hadn't seen. I just barely clicked on the link when I saw it as your something fun. But I'm gonna have to completely read the thing top to bottom. It looks right up my alley. That's cool.
Yeah, there you go. And so yes, right, it will sit at the Lagrange point L2, and there you go. That's my something fun. I look forward
to seeing what it sees.
Oh, me too. Yeah. Somewhere else on here, it said that it has about 6 times the area as Hubble for like mirror area. So
yeah, the thing that caught my eye on here was they're able to do daily uploads and downloads, and it's a million miles away, but it's able to do daily, twice per day, updates at that distance. That's kind of cool. Like with whatever full data it needs to send back and forth and to send it commands to do whatever it does, still fascinating to me.
I think, NASA's Deep Space Network is cool. I should do an updated read on it, because I mean the last thing I read was years ago, but it was all about like how do we connect to something like the Mars orbiter or one of the rovers and things like that, because they get basically, depending on where the planets are in the solar system at any given point in time, they kind of have to bounce the signals around, and it's routing, but it's not routing. It's not routing local. It's literally stellar routing. That's awesome.
Yes,
that's awesome.
Anyways,
all right,
cool stuff.
Well, there we go. Let's call it a show. Yeah. All right,
you're a show.
Have a great week, Eric. I'll talk to you later.
You too, John. Good night.
Bye.